Hey, what's up you guys? Today I wanted to discuss some of my favorite standalone books since last week I discussed some of my favorite series. So let's just get into it and discuss my top 8 standalone books. I don't have as many favorite standalone books just because I haven't read as many standalone books. I am a little bit more of a series girl, but let's just get into it. So starting off with number 8. This is Seven Fingers. 8. The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This book is a super cute little rom-com that also has some hard-hitting points in it. I do recommend this. I know, or I believe that it was turned into a movie. I have not seen the movie, but this was a great standalone book with some strong characters in it. Number 7 is Finding Aubrey. I just find Aubrey to be kind of relatable. I mean, I don't have anxiety to the degree that she does, but I believe that we all have some anxieties, and we can all kind of recognize those anxieties when we read them or see them in films. And so I do like to see those represented and to see how that can really affect a person, and I feel like it was done really well in this book with how she handles her anxiety and how her anxiety started by running her life and how she was trying to cope with that and deal with that, and I just liked seeing that struggle. 6. Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. So I'm sure all of you have probably heard of this book. It is definitely a super popular one, especially a few years ago. It went around and was really popular. But I also found this book to be super relatable, and I loved how it was kind of about a college student and not about, high schooler, because as a college student, it's just cool to see us represented a little bit more, because there aren't a lot of books that detail this time in your life where people treat you like you're an adult, but you don't really feel like you're an adult, but you also feel like you're an adult. So it's just really confusing because you don't know what you're doing with your life yet, but you're still trying to figure it out, and people constantly ask you, what are you doing? And you don't know, and you don't know what you want to do, and it's just hard to answer that question. And I liked this book because it really showed that part of someone's life. So solid book right here. 5. Number 5, The Martian by Andy Weir. So I really loved this book. I read this back in high school with some of my engineering friends. We had this engineering academy thing in high school, and we went and saw this movie, and some of my friends and I, we read it before we went and saw the movie, and I really enjoyed this book. I loved how engineering was really used in it, and I love how you have to kind of think about these problems, and it is about problem solving, and that really is what being an engineer is about. And so I found it really cool to kind of see that in a book, and to see it so well done in a book, and to see it be so funny. I absolutely loved it, and I love how it really comes down to what you know and how can you use that knowledge, just not knowing something, because knowing something is useless if you can't actually put it into practice, if you can't do anything with it. So I loved how this book really showed that. I loved Mark Watney in it, and it really is so funny. So definitely a great book if you haven't read it. Or The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. So this is the only standalone fantasy book that I believe that I've ever read, and I really enjoyed seeing that and reading that. So if you guys have any standalone fantasy recommendations, comment those down below. I'd love to check out some more standalone fantasy, but I really enjoyed this book. I really loved the characters. I thought they were so fun. I loved how it was like such an adventure story. It really was going from point A to point B, but so many things happen along the way, and you're really discovering so many different things, and you're trying to uncover this mystery, and you're meeting these different characters, and I just love this book. It's so unique, so original. Highly recommend. 3. Okay, number 3 is really hard for me to reach, so we're just gonna say it. It's Looking for Alaska by John Green. So I'm sure you have all heard of Looking for Alaska. If you haven't read it yet, I really do recommend it. It was one of those things where it's so gut-wrenching, but personally, I had that experience of going to an assembly and hearing the words, hey, so-and-so is not going to be a student here anymore because they're not with us anymore. Like, I had that experience, and it really is jarring when you are in like a younger grade like that, or you're in high school, and like young people, like, we don't really die that often, and especially not in like horrific ways. And so it's very heartbreaking to read that. Sorry if I spoiled it for you. I just think that it's very impactful to kind of delve into that and delve into the idea of someone dying, and what does that mean, especially when you are kind of younger and you don't, really understand what that means. You don't understand what it means to not have all of those questions answered. So I think this is definitely a really important book that people should read, especially around middle school and the beginning of high school, because that's when you really start to grow up a little bit, and you start to get your own head and start thinking on your own. And so I just really loved that book. Now we're on to my top 2. These are books that really left me thinking after I'd read them, and really contemplating things, and and thinking about just my worldview. So these top 2 are really great books. If you have not read them, I really recommend. But we'll start off with number 2. The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. So I'm sure all of you have heard about this book, but I read this back in high school and absolutely loved it. I think that the perspective in this book is so unique, and this is not a book that's necessarily plot heavy, it's very character heavy, but it takes place at a time where I think that it's important to focus on the characters and to focus on the people, because Nazi Germany was definitely a time where people were not being focused on like they should have been. They were not being treated like people. And so this book really delves into the fact that everyone there was a person, like not just the Jews, but also the families that were against this. They were people too, and they really struggled too. And I highly recommend. Okay, and so now we're on to my number 1 read, which was actually something I read earlier this year, so you can check out my February or January wrap-up. I don't remember which month I read it in, but that book is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I adored this book. This book, honestly, if you told me it was real, I might potentially believe you. I mean, I know it's fiction, but this book felt so real. The characters in it felt so real. No one was morally good. There were so many morally gray characters. They were all gray characters. No one was all bad. No one was all good. People did do some shady things. There were some people who were really bad people, but maybe they did something good at one point too. So it was just so fantastic, so fantastically written. Definitely a character-driven book with a few twists here and there. And like there's so many lines in this book where I just feel like the story shifts and changes and morphs, and it just goes in directions you wouldn't expect it to. So I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. So those are my favorite standalone books. I wanted to thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you have any favorite standalone books, please comment those down below, especially if they're standalone fantasy, because I'm really looking to check out some more of that. I post videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, so I will see you then. Goodbye!